All right, let's do this. Okay, so we're starting with this book. It's called The Tao of Physics, and it's by Fritjof Capra, and it's about an exploration of the parallels between modern physics and the Eastern mysticism. मजा आएगा. Okay, so I'm going straight to the first chapter, which talks about the modern physics. A path with a heart. So any path is only a path, and there is no affront to oneself or to others in dropping it if that is what your heart tells you. Look at every path closely and deliberately. Try it as many times as you think necessary. Then ask yourself, and yourself alone, one question: does this path have a heart? And if it does, the path is good. If it doesn't, it is of no use. And this quote is from Carlos Castaneda, The Teachings of Don Juan. Now, modern physics has had a profound influence on almost all aspects of human society. It has become the basis of natural science, and the combination of natural and technical science has fundamentally changed the conditions of life on our Earth, both in beneficial and detrimental ways. Today, there is hardly an industry that does not make use of the results of atomic physics, and the influence these have had on the political structure of the world through their application to atomic weaponry is well known. However, the influence of modern physics goes beyond technology. It extends to the realm of thought and culture, where it has led to a deep revision in our conception of the universe and our relation to it. The exploration of the atomic and subatomic world in the 20th century has revealed an unsuspected limitation of classical ideas and has necessitated a radical revision of many of our basic concepts. The concepts of matter in subatomic physics, as example, for example, is totally different from the traditional idea of a material substance in classical physics. The same is true for concepts like space, time, or cause and effect. These concepts, however, are fundamental to our outlook on the world around us, and with their radical transformation, our whole worldview has begun to change. Now, these changes brought about by modern physics have been widely discussed by physicists and by philosophers over the past decades. But very seldom has it been realized that they all seem to lead in the same direction, towards a view of the world which is very similar to the views held in Eastern mysticism. The concepts of modern physics often show surprising parallels to the ideas expressed in the religious philosophies of the Far East. Although these parallels have not as yet been discussed extensively, they have been noticed by some of the great physicists of our century when they came in contact with Far Eastern culture during their lecture tours to India, China, and Japan. The following three quotations serve as examples. The general notions about human understanding, which are illustrated by discoveries in atomic physics, are not in the nature of things wholly unfamiliar, wholly unheard of, or new. Even in our own culture, they have a history, and in Buddhist and Hindu thought, a more considerable and a center place. What we shall find is an exemplification and encouragement and a refinement of old wisdom. And it's by Julius Robert Oppenheimer. And the next quotation is from Niels Bohr. For a parallel to the lesson of atomic theory, we must turn to those kinds of epistemological problems that which already thinkers like the Buddha and Lao Tzu have been confronted when trying to harmonize a position as spectators and actors in the great drama of existence. And the next quote is from Werner Heinsberg. The great scientific contribution in theoretical physics that has come from Japan since the last war may be an indication of a certain relationship between philosophical ideas in the transition of the Far East and the philosophical substance of quantum theory. The purpose of this book is to explore this relationship between the concepts of modern physics and the basic ideas in the philosophical and religious traditions of the Far East. We shall see how the two foundations of the 20th century physics, quantum theory and the relativity theory, both force us to see the world very much in the way a Hindu, a Buddhist, or a Taoist will see it, and how this similarity strengthens when we look at the recent attempts to combine these two theories in order to describe the phenomena of the submicrocosmic world, the properties and interactions of the subatomic particles of which all matter is made. Here, the parallels between modern physics and Eastern mysticism are most striking, and we shall often encounter statements where it is almost impossible to say whether they have been made by physicists or by Eastern mystics. When I refer to Eastern mysticism, I mean the religious philosophies of Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism. Although these comprise a vast number of subtly interwoven spiritual disciplines and philosophical systems, the basic features of their worldview are the same. This view is not limited to the East, but can be found to some degree in all mystically oriented philosophies. The argument of this book could therefore be phrased more generally by saying that modern physics leads us to a view of the world which is very similar to the views held by mystics of all ages and traditions. Mystical traditions are present in all religions, and mystical elements can be found in many schools of Western philosophy. The parallels to modern physics appear not only in the Vedas of Hinduism, in the I Ching or in the Buddhist sutras, but also in the fragments of the Heraclitus, in the Sufism of Ibn Arabi, or in the teachings of the Yaqui sorcerer Don Juan. The difference between Eastern and Western mysticism is that mystical schools have always played a marginal role in the West, whereas they constitute the mainstream of Eastern philosophical and religious thought. I shall, therefore, for the sake of simplicity, talk about the Eastern worldview and shall only occasionally mention other sources of mystical thought. If physics leads us today to a worldview which is essentially mystical, it returns in a way to its beginning. 2,500 years ago. It is interesting to follow the evolution of Western science along its spiral path, starting from the mystical philosophies of the early Greeks, rising and unfolding in an impressive development of intellectual thought that increasingly turned away from its mystical origins to develop a worldview which is in sharp contrast to that of the Far East. In its most recent stages, Western science is finally overcoming this view and coming back to those of the early Greek and the Eastern philosophies. This time, however, it is not only based on intuition, but also on experiments of great precision and sophistication, and on a rigorous and consistent mathematical formalism. The roots of physics, as of all Western science, are to be found in the first period of Greek philosophy in the 6th century BC, in a culture where science, philosophy, and religion were not separated. The sages of the Milesian school in Ionia were not concerned with such distinctions. Their aim was to discover the essential nature or real constitution of things which they call physis. The term physics is derived from this Greek word and meant, therefore, originally the endeavor of seeing the essential nature of all things. Wow. Hmm. And that's exactly what and how we address in Taoism. So, this, of course, is also the central aim of all mystics, and the philosophy of the Milesian school did indeed have a strong mystical flavor. I, I somehow they keep talking about the mystical somehow, and then it becomes very mythical. So people do not agree to many of the Taoist philosophies, or you know. So but it's pure physics, it's pure science. The Milesians were called hylozoists, or those who think that matter is alive, by the later Greeks because they saw no distinction between animate and inanimate, spirit and matter. In fact, they did not even have a word for matter. Fantastic.
since they saw all forms of existence as manifestations of the physics, endowed with life and spirituality. Thus Thales declared all things to be full of gods, and Anaximander saw the universe as a kind of organism which was supported by pneuma, the cosmic breath, in the same way as the human body is supported by air. The monistic and the organic view of the Milesians was very close to that of the ancient Indian and Chinese philosophy, and the parallels to Eastern thought are even stronger in the philosophy of Herculitus of Ephesus. Herculitus believed in a world of perpetual change, of eternal becoming. For him, all static being was based on deception, and his universal principle was fire, a symbol for the continuous flow and change of all things. Heraclitus taught that all changes in the world arise from the dynamic and cyclic interplay of opposites, and he saw any pair of opposites as a unity. This unity, which contains and transcends all opposing forces, he called the logos, the yin and yang symbol in the circle of Tao, in the circle that's unity. So, of course, we have the Trinity symbol. Well, the split of this unity began with the Eleatic school, which assumed a divine principle standing above all gods and men. This principle was first identified with the unity unity of the universe, but was later seen as an intelligent and personal God who stands above the world and directs it. Thus began a trend of thought which led ultimately to the separation of spirit and matter and to a dualism which became characteristics of Western philosophy. A drastic step in this direction was taken by Parmenides of Ilya, who was in strong opposition to Heraclitus. He called his basic principle the being and held that it was unique and invariable. He considered change to be impossible and regarded the change we seem to perceive in the world as mere illusions of the senses. The concept of an indestructible substance as the subject of varying properties grew out of this philosophy and became one of the fundamental concepts of Western thought. In the 5th century BC, the Greek philosophers tried to overcome the sharp contrast between the views of Parmenides and Herculitus. In order to reconcile the idea of unchangeable being of Parmenides and that of eternal becoming of Heraclitus, they assumed that the being is manifest in certain invariable substances, the mixture and separation of which gives rise to the changes in the world. This led to the concept of the atom, the smallest indivisible unit of matter, which found its clearest expression in the philosophy of um, like Leucippus and Democritus. The Greek atomist drew a clear line between spirit and matter, picturing matter as being made of several basic building blocks. They were purely passive and intrinsically dead particles moving in the void. The cause of their motion was not explained, but was often associated with external forces, which were assumed to be spiritual origin and fundamentally different from matter. In subsequent centuries, this image became an essential element of Western thought, of the dualism between mind and matter, between body and soul. Hmm. And that's where the suffering lies in duality. Okay, as the idea of a division between spirit and matter took hold, the philosophers turned their attention to the spiritual world rather than the material, to the human soul and the problems of ethics. These questions were to occupy Western thought for more than 2,000 years after the culmination of Greek science and culture in the 5th and the 4th centuries BC. The scientific knowledge of antiquity was systemized and organized by Aristotle, who created the scheme which was to be the basis of the Western view of the universe for 2000 years. But Aristotle himself believed that question concerning the human soul and the contemplation of God's perfection were much more valuable than investigations of the material world. The reason the Aristotelian model of the universe remained unchallenged for so long was precisely this lack of interest in the material world and the strong hold of the Christian church, which supported Aristotle's doctrines throughout the Middle Ages. Further development of Western science had to wait until the Renaissance, when men began to free themselves from the influence of Aristotle and the church and showed a new interest in nature. In the late 15th century, the study of nature was approached for the first time in a truly scientific spirit, and experiments were undertaken to test speculative ideas. As this development was paralleled by a growing interest in mathematics, it finally led to the formulation of proper scientific theories based on experiment and expressed in mathematical language. Galileo was the first to combine em- empirical knowledge with mathematics and is therefore seen as the father of modern science. The birth of modern science were preceded and accompanied by a development of philosophical thought, which led to an extreme formulation of the spirit matter dualism. This formulation appeared in the 17th century in the philosophy of René Descartes, who based his view of nature on a fundamental division into two separate and independent realms, that of mind and that of matter. The Cartesian division allowed scientists to treat matter as dead and completely separate from themselves, and to see the material world as a multitude of different objects assembled into huge machines. Such a mechanistic worldview was held by Isaac Newton, who constructed his mechanics on its basis and made it the foundation of classical physics. From the second half of the 17th to the end of the 19th century, the mechanistic Newton model of the universe dominated all scientific thought. It was parallel to the image. It was paralleled by the image of a monarchical God who ruled the world from above by imposing his divine law on it. The fundamental laws of nature searched for by the scientists were thus seen as the laws of God, invariable and eternal, to which the world was subjected. I see so many questions arising in everyone's minds. Um, do you want me to stop and discuss this, or how do you would like to? Yeah, you want to discuss. Okay, you have a doubt. Yes, Nandini.
Yes, they separate like atom and the, like matter. Um, some of them they says no, it's like is there God is there or not, or somehow there is energy upon us, like telling us as God. In modern science, they're telling us quantum physics or something like magnetic field, electromagnetic field. Like
So, what is the question? What is the doubt?
question is there or is there God is God or not? That they are
Oh, is
telling
it?
something like spiritually, like Galileo. You said no, or Galileo said like mathematically, there's something research they are proven or not that there is a existence of spirituality is proven or not, or is there still is a question. They, that's what.
Okay. Anyone who would like to? Yeah, Mita, you just unmuted yourself. Would you like to share something?
Yeah. I actually, it's not really a response to what Nandini said, but it's just my own musings because I had this book many years ago, but I couldn't really dig into it. But over a period of time, this whole idea of energy healing that came up and the fact that matter, in whichever form, it's energy. So, and the point about spirit and matter, Prakriti and Purusha, which I really, it resonated with me. The very first question, that does the path have a heart? That is so perfect, versus the mechanistic point of view, that logical, the one, the Newtonian versus what quantum physics is talking about. And that part, which is more about relations, emotions, and giving that freedom, of who we are and where we are going. I mean, it's endless then there are so many shades of colors and grays versus that whole mechanistic thing. So I basically quite, while I might not have fully absorbed quantum physics, in the way that one would expect to, or what he's saying, but I just felt it at a very emotional, level. It somewhere resonated within my being, whatever you were speaking, but like I just cut through all the words because some of it is, difficult to absorb at one reading. But I really appreciated that part.
Yeah, yeah, true that. Okay. Well, Nandini, hold on to this, huh? Hold on to this, whatever
Yeah.
you were sharing. So hold on to that. So this is Meeta sharing. Let's hear what Surinder has to say for this. Are she, she, I think she, yeah, must be the network. So, why I stopped also was because I realized that, I mean, so when I teach and what I have experienced and what I go through is so much more different from what science. I mean, I'm not even talking about quantum science because, um, okay, Surinder is here. Surinder, what would you have to say? What's your share on this?
Uh, I don't see any conflict in my mind as such because, uh, people will always have different views. You know, some will think this way and the others will think that way. Sometimes the twin will
That is,
meet.
we are being very diplomatic. No, 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 no,
Not
no.
being diplomatic. That's my state of mind at this point that, and people evolve also and they change their minds also. Those who people, who never believed in mysticism may one day study quantum physics and then somehow change their mind. Okay, they always said energy doesn't change, doesn't, destroy, doesn't get destroyed, it changes form. And uh, that day you said there's nothing inanimate, so and everything is spirit. Actually, you said there was a time when people didn't even have the word for matter. So I think, as you said, mysticism was the major part of people's life in Eastern world, and Western world was more towards materialism and matter. Uh, but uh, Eastern philosophy definitely was that. But in the recent years, we see the shift in Eastern people, common people, a lot of materialism and matter, focus on matter, and Western people rather focusing more on quantum physics and now interested in Eastern philosophies. So we
Yeah,
we cannot have
that's
any
true.
final word. Yeah, we cannot have any final word that was they are always going to be that, and we are going always to be this. So since because of internet or because of global village kind of thing, we are now. I think the thinking is evolving very fast.
Yes, true that. And so it's like, so that's what I was sharing, that when I teach or what I have experienced, I might be following just probably, just the Taoist way.
Mhm.
And that's why this book, I found it very interesting that it says the Tao of physics. And I was like, okay. Um, so what I have experienced, like you shared that day, I at one point during my practices, I felt that there are no innate objects, and it was so I, I can't talk about these things to normal people here because it's more like people say, "You've gone mad." You say that stones have life. I said, I've had the most magical. Um, I love to travel and amazing magical spaces being held by these big, huge rocks on which I just go and I lie down and I sleep. I sleep on these big, huge rocks. And I've had such, if you want to call them mystical, okay, but it's, I've felt them soften, I've felt them talk, I felt them. I mean, as being a part of them. Then I realized that they're alive. So I said, then why does everyone say, oh, living objects, non-living objects? So I, and I realized that whatever I am going exactly opposite the way we are being taught science, or we are being taught the day-to-day things, and I seem to be walking an entirely different way. It's a different path, and it's about that totally 100% of. So, this is my experience. Um, so this one, I kind of see that it was like how it was in the much earlier days, and they knew it, and it is the segregation of uh, these spaces which brought came in at a much later date, and yeah, and today's science is defined more with separation and dualism rather than being held together as one space, as unity. And that is the difference Nandini is talking about. Is that there? Is this there? Is the God there? So, you know, so you rely on your own experiences when you practice. Don't go by hearsay. Don't stick with what I am saying. Don't stick with anyone. Just experience and feel and know. Yes, Surinda.
In being a Sikh, the first thing we say is ik o ankar. So ik means, they said, people translate it into this one God. It doesn't mean that there's one God. It means there's only God. So in everything means in the speck of dust also, this just God.
So
God,
the
yeah, no,
yeah. So she was
yeah,
asking about, she's mixing it. She's saying, is there God or is there energy? Like,
this,
you can't
this
separate it. It
God.
is, that's it, it is. There
Yeah,
is
so
no,
the final word
but
is only God.
God is a very religious term. Like, okay, if you have a picture and if you have this, then only you go only to the God. And you can't say that this is energy and let me go only and do this. It doesn't work like that.
And I
And
think the word, yeah, this is the word God doesn't resonate with us actually. The word God is English word, and it is very limited to what people think of God. Someone in the clouds with a white beard, maybe. No, no, no. For Eastern people, God is not. We have Devi Shakti also, we have Brahma also, we have Vishnu also, we have everything, Mahakal also, we have Khadagdhari also. So for us, it's Ishwar is one, but Sroop, everything is its Sroop. Maya is all Sroop. So, no, Nirgun and Sargun Sroop. So, if we talk about Nirgun and Sargun and then Shabd Roop also, sound, Nad also. So, for us, the whistling winds in the forest is also Nad, is also God, if you want to use the English word. The water flowing is also Nad. Then, and this body is a temple of God, then. So there are like this depth, more and more depth to that discussion.
hmm, so maybe I can read further ahead. I think little more. Yeah, we got that clarity on that, right? Anandini.
But they separate, no, ma'am, like evil and God, like that. When we go to that side, means they separate both sides, and
So they've created the dualism, no? The separation, no? It's not there.
uh, like they're saying as a negative part inside
And
the
and and where does it exist?
that side.
It exists in the unity, in the Tao, in the circle of Tao.
Is that existing or not? You're asking, ma'am, like for
No, it. only if you look at that separately, but it is a part of the unity in the circle of Tao. So I always ask you to go to the circle to look at the bigger circle, right?
Okay, like
It will exist only in that, only in the duality. This
that
duality was
void you said
brought.
void.
Yeah, so it was, yeah, it was brought in the duality. The opposites are brought only in the duality. Otherwise, it's not there. In the oneness, there is no duality.
Oh, the oneness
Ah,
stage they said, yeah.
oh
Yeah.
yes. I love that. It's it's very simple. It's a very simple thing. Um, but somebody used to always tell me, like, you keep saying that it is simple, but we don't get it. Yeah, because it is simple. It needs to be complicated for you to get into that. All right. So yeah. So it's over, like how they brought the so I will read that last part again. Um
Can
yeah,
I add something here, Sonika?
Hanji.
In Gurbani, we have a bani called Japsab. It is by 10th Guru. And then there he namaskars, Ades, namaskar, namastam, to I think more than 1,000 groups of, creator. There he namaskar to the rogue also, to the krodh also, to the, destroyer also, Haryang, Karyang, Namastang, Haryang, Namastang, Karyang, है ना? तो बनाने वाले को भी नमस्कार, मिटाने वाले माने it's one, monolith. There's no duality. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very mechanical viewpoint of the modern science. So a mechanistic worldview was held even by Isaac Newton, who constructed his mechanics on its basis and made it the foundation of the classical physics. From the second half of the 17th century to the end of the 19th century, the Newtonian model of the universe dominated all scientific thought. It was paralleled by the image of a monarchical God who ruled the world from above by imposing his divine law of it. The fundamental laws of nature, searched for by the scientists, were thus seen as the laws of God, invariable and eternal, to which the world was subjected. The philosophy of Descartes was not only important for the development of classical physics, but also had a tremendous influence on the general Western way of thinking up to the present day. The Descartes' famous sentence, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I exist, has led Westerners to equate their identity with their mind instead of with their whole organism. As a consequence of the Cartesian division, most individuals are aware of themselves as isolated egos existing inside their bodies. The mind has been separated from the body and given the futile task of controlling it, thus causing an apparent conflict between the conscious will and the involuntary instincts. Each individual has been split up further into a large number of separate compartments according to his or her activities, talents, feelings, beliefs, etc., which are engaged in endless conflicts, generating continuous metaphysical confusion and frustration. So, when we practice with the Qigong, what we do is we get into uh, the the larger consciousness space, which is being held, and it does not define. There are no definitions there. There is no identification there with anything separate. Like they say, like they do not. I mean, just a small example. They do not mention that, oh, you have this illness or the name of the disease or name of anything as such. They do not identify with that, but they just work with the connection or the becoming one or to realizing that you are one towards that realization. And the realization does not happen from the mind, it happens from the system, from the body, from the dissolving, from the expansion. So, I mean, I see more and more confirmation. It's more like a confirmation of our earth, basically. All right. The inner fragmentation mirrors our view of the world outside, which is seen as a multitude of separate objects and events. The natural environment is treated as if it is consisted of separate parts to be exploited by different interest groups. The fragmented view is further extended to society, which is split into different nations, races, religious, and political groups. The belief that all fragments in ourselves, in our environment, and in our society are really separate can be seen as the essential reason for the present series of social, ecological, and cultural crises. There we go. It has alienated us from the nature and from our fellow human beings. It has brought a grossly unjust distribution of natural resources, creating economic and political disorder. An ever rising wave of violence, both spontaneous and institutionalized, and an ugly, polluted environment in which life has often become physically and mentally unhealthy. The Cartesian division and the mechanistic worldview have thus been beneficial and detrimental at the same time. They were extremely successful in the development of classical physics and technology, but had many adverse consequences of a civilization. It is fascinating to see that the 20th century science, which originated in the Cartesian split and in the mechanistic worldview, and which indeed only became possible because of such a view, now overcomes this fragmentation and leads back to the idea of unity expressed in the earlier Greek and Eastern philosophies. In contrast to the mechanistic Western view, the Eastern view of the world is organic. For the Eastern mystic, all things and events perceived by the senses are interrelated, connected, and are but different aspects of manifestations of the same ultimate reality. Our tendency to divide the perceived world into individual and separate things and to experience ourselves as isolated egos in this world is seen as an illusion which comes from our measuring and categorizing mentality. It is called avidya or ignorance in Buddhist philosophy and is seen as a state of a disturbed mind which has to be overcome. When the mind is disturbed, The multiplicity of things is produced. But the mind, when the mind is quieted, the multiplicity of things disappear. This, it says it all. That's it. It just says it all. Yeah. Although the various schools of Eastern mysticism differ in many details, they all emphasize the basic unity of the universe, which is the central features of their teaching. The highest aim for their followers, whether they are Hindus, Buddhists, or Taoists, is to become aware of the unity and mutual interrelations of all things, to transcend the notion of an isolated individual self, and to identify themselves with the ultimate reality. The emergence of this awareness, known as enlightenment, is not only an intellectual act, but is an experience which involves the whole person and is religious in its ultimate nature. For this reason, most Eastern philosophies are essentially religious philosophies. Hmm. In the Eastern view, then, the division of nature into separate objects is not fundamental, and any such objects have a fluid and ever changing character. The Eastern worldview is therefore intrinsically dynamic and contains time and change as essential features. The cosmos is seen as one inseparable reality, forever in motion, alive, organic, spiritual, and material at the same time. Okay, little bit left. Since motion and change are essential properties of things, motion and change are essential properties of things, the forces causing the motion are not outside the objects, as in the classical Greek view, but an intrinsic property of matter. Correspondingly, the Eastern image of the divine is not that of a ruler who directs the world from above. Nandini, keep listening to this. The Eastern image of the divine is not that of a ruler who directs the world from above, but of a principle that controls everything from within. He who dwelling in all things, yet is other than all things, whom all things do not know, whose body all things are, who controls all things from within. He is your soul, the inner controller, the immortal. In the following chapters, we'll show that the basic elements of the Eastern worldview are also those of the worldview emerging from modern physics. They are intended to suggest that Eastern thought, and more generally mystical thought, provide a consistent and relevant philosophical background to the theories of contemporary science, a conception of the world in which scientific discoveries can be in perfect harmony with spiritual aims and religious beliefs. The two basic themes of this conception are the unity and interrelation of all phenomena and the intrinsically dynamic nature of the universe. The further we penetrate into the submicrocosmic world, the more we shall realize that the modern physicist, like the Eastern mystics, has come to see the world as a system of inseparable, interacting, and ever moving components, with the observer being an integral part of this system. The organic, ecological worldview of the Eastern philosophies is no doubt one of the main reasons for the immense popularity they have recently gained in the West, especially among the young people. In a Western culture, which is still dominated by the mechanistic, fragmented view of the world, an increasing number of people have seen this as the underlying reason for the widespread dissatisfaction in our society, and many have turned to Eastern ways of liberation. It is interesting and perhaps not too surprising that those who are attracted by the Eastern mysticism, who consult the I Ching and practice yoga or other forms of meditation, in general have a marked anti scientific attitude. They tend to see science and physics in particular as an unimaginative, narrow minded discipline, which is responsible for all the evils of modern technology. Okay, so this book aims at improving the image of science by showing that there is an essential harmony between the spirits of Eastern wisdom and Western science. It is going to attempt to suggest that modern physics go far beyond technology, that the way or Tao of physics can be the path with a heart, a way to spiritual knowledge and self realization. Hmm. Okay. So, yeah, maybe the point which Mita was trying to say about the quantum physics. I mean, yeah, I think I should sit down and probably have a good chat with my son, who is a lot into quantum physics. So, yeah. So, but it is being said more and more, and we can see in because of the internet and because the thing that there are many Eastern people who are doctors, physicists who are talking about a lot about energy. Actually, the earlier ones have also. It's just that they have been put under wraps. So that's what actually has happened. So now, I guess because of this connectivity and Surinder mentioned like the global village scene that, oh, we are more connected and we are more, the scientific phase coming up. Yeah. So maybe a quick share. Anyone? Okay.
I think like so in our ancestors, now the keeping a statue and praying, no man, they they are made for to save for the nature only. Like in my thought, these gods, the statues that Hindus, everything, everything is connected to the nature, which is to save the nature. Otherwise, some of them today are saying I'm a atheist, so I do everything like that. Maybe I have more questions, but I have to return right and I can share the thing. That
Okay,
in my point
sure.
of view, the God, the everything, blah blah, is made to just to save the nature from the humans.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay.
Because in Hinduism, every animal are in the form of God only.
You know, I had an amazing realization once when I was at a very high altitude. It was pretty high, and when I looked up at those snow peaks, and look down from the mountains at the river, and I suddenly realized that what are we saying? We are not even a speck in that big nature, you know? Mm. I mean, if the day it decides, it can wipe us out. It's as simple as that. I mean, totally. It's the ego which says that, oh, the God was created to save it. The nature is to save nature from man. No, all these dramas are being done only by the human mind, nothing else. It's just nothing else. Nature is so powerful. It is so vast, and you step out and it puts you in your place. कुछ भी नहीं है हम
हाँ,
लोग कुछ भी नहीं है हम लोग अपने सिर्फ बड़े बड़े ईगोज लेके घूमते हैं दैट्स इट नथिंग
the
एल्स
other side, they also keeping stuffing in the mind is the global warming, everything is destroying, everything is going. But nature, however, detoxing itself only. I recently
yeah it
watched
is it yeah it'll wipe you out simple.
nature will detox itself by wiping the humans, everything. Like,
All the power games played by big things and
yeah,
everything. Yeah, yeah. It's okay. Yeah.
My concern, Sonika, is that, the way West was trying to patent healthy, the way the
No, no, no,
West is
was
trying
not
to.
trying. Not trying. They
Actually,
have.
yeah, they have. And then they are dominating yoga and pranayam and Eastern this thing, meditation. And now that so many Westerners are trying to learn Eastern philosophy, I hope they don't start dominating Eastern philosophies by, sort of. I don't know how to put it, but we have Eastern philosophies, we have Eastern masters, we have present day masters also, and we are discussing in a very, very open way, the Tao of physics, where we are talking about physics as a scientific subject, and we are talking about Tao of physics. What a beautiful amalgamation. And concerns should be that how to keep it pure, pure without any political agenda. Uh, so,
The
how,
discussions can be of any kind.
how
The
to
evolution
discuss
can
this? I
happen.
think I have to rejoin. There was a phone call, so I will have to rejoin.
No, you are already here with us. I can hear you. It's just that your
I
video is
haven't,
off.
we are not able to hear. I will rejoin.
Okay. Yeah. What do you have to say, Meeta?
It's also put me in a very contemplative mood because the context, like about the spiritual laws, and then there is this law of oneness, and this whole thing that Nandini also talked. The fact that all of us and all of us, this whole sense of connectedness. I was also in the forest the last few days. I mean, it's so it feels so connected, but we have lost that sense of connectedness. But at the same time, I must say that this feeling of oneness, there are so many different schools of spirituality and who are trying to get it all together and sending out healings, global peace and so it's like that at the energy level everyone's trying, a lot of people are trying to do their best, and that fact is that there it is there somewhere embedded in us that we are all one, and even like this law of synchronicity, for example, that, oh, I was just thinking about you and there you are, somewhere, that also, that sense of oneness is and it's said, and with this philosophy that, and we all know that if kahin pe, somebody is being, somewhere a forest is being burned, we are responsible for it in some way or the other, so that deep sense, but I'm getting that context at a deeper level, because it's coming in this way, though there's so much that, we're full of and it's there. It's just that sometimes we don't share too much this way. You just have the right people and do it. And I think this is a beautiful forum, where we're sharing.
Yeah, see, so when we speak, so what you said is if many start talking about this, and many start connecting and going deeper. And I love that paragraph where it was that he who dwelling in all things, yet is other than all things, whom all things do not know, whose body all things are, who controls all things from within. He is your soul, the Lord, the inner controller, the immortal. And that uh, it's not that of a ruler who directs the world from above, but of a principle that controls everything from within. That's it. I mean, it's just that. So if we become more and more aware of that and we become connected, we connect so very easily to one another. And if we are talking and thinking and doing and sending those signals out there for people, more people to connect, that is the wave which rises instead of, you know, whatever needs to happen. So, yeah. So more and more people need to feel this oneness, to know this oneness, to become aware of that they are already a part of each other. And see, that is how we get affected, right? Where, I mean, why COVID had such a big, huge effect on all of us? Because the masses went into a wave and it was fed, and then it started affecting all of us and it started spreading. So, if that can happen, then the
Okay.
other way also it can happen, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a whole
We
concept of
can
collective consciousness.
collective
Exactly what
consciousness,
you say. If it can happen in the, then the converse can happen. And
of
that is
course. So, collective consciousness is very, very powerful. So then instead of talking about the global warming, so let's talk about the interconnectedness and about, I mean, instead of talking about something where they put so much of focus, energy onto that, let's work with our practices. Let's do readings. Let's talk about the higher consciousness. Instead of even talking, I like to get into practice. I have a very simple way, a very simple method. Get down, practice, put it into action. That's it. Um, so yeah, that is very important. And hmm.
Can I share something? I
Oh
studied
yeah, you're
university.
there, Tanvir. Yes,
I'm
Tanvir.
there. I'm there. And since I've been listening, I was like, if I don't say anything, it'll stay inside me. Not a good place. Not a good place. But I just wanted to say Descartes has been on the downhill for some time now because I studied literature and this entire Western thought. I remember a good 15 years ago, 16 years ago, 17 years ago, our teachers were talking about how we are trying to introduce in translation English literature from Indian thought, from Indian writers, and they led quite a fight because the need to teach English literature, Western thought was there in the colonies. It wasn't, you didn't find English literature in universities in England. It was because they wanted to create a curriculum in order to have the native be civilized. So they led quite a fight. And I remember my sister was studying in St. Stephen's and I was in Ramjas. And the way she was, still the background readings that they had to do had so much to do with the Bible, the so-called biblical, ideas. And but still, like, I wish I could have gotten more into it because it was an entirely different way. And the way the background readings that we had, the focus that we had on Indian writers. And then I don't know, something inside me said I cannot do masters in English literature. I ended up doing comparative Indian literature. And there I studied all modalities, temple architecture. This, it was still very rationalist because you have to refer to papers. There's not as much practice. And I was like, this is so head heavy. I got out of it. And then I got into ecology as well. But something inside me, and then I had some practices, but it was something inside me said, because I couldn't sit with Descartes because they already told us this is a downhill. But I remember even at Bhumi College Bangalore, when I was there, they began with Descartes is the problem. I mean, he gave us, I think, therefore I am. And then you have to look at malaise a certain way, disease a certain way. They're trying to do a lot of things again. And I remember that this is why, like, my senior, he had done Tai Chi, and I had way back in Delhi attended a week-long workshop. So there are, and very recently I went to Mingyur Rinpoche, which was last year. I went to a Buddhist, a 2-3 day retreat at IHC. And there was an English literature teacher from Lady Sri Ram, and I was so happy. I was like, okay, there are more of those. So I was like, I want to go visit Delhi University and see if it's still the same, which is not bad because you come, that was a kind of training, and it holds me in good stead where I see injustice, or where I see, okay, the lack of, let's say, a comprehensive knowledge, or where I see someone with very a lot of privilege and not maybe understanding other perspectives. But I would say that there's so much about our practices, other practices also. I mean, I've been open to, I think, certain Western practices as well, not Western per se, but as she spoke about collective consciousness, there's so much about consciousness in new age Western writings. And also, like, I haven't been able to pick up the Chinese part so much, whereas I believe so much in the Chinese idea of their nadis, and their ideas of how to look at. I've gotten acupuncture done once, and I can tell you I slept on the table, I think, for a few minutes, and I have sleep problems. So I got it done not once, for about 2 weeks. Yeah. And I had tinnitus. I have tinnitus, and it went away. So I think there is a lot happening in the Tao physics. I wish I would have picked up this book earlier, but I'm so glad I was there, and you read out the most crucial parts, and the heart. And no affront, no path is an affront. What did they say? No path is an affront. So it's all leading to one. As mom said, God,
Yes,
there's only God. It doesn't mean there's only God. It means there's only God,
only
God,
God.
God, God, God everywhere.
So that means you are also God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nandini, you're God. Awesome. Lovely. So that
Lovely.
was very nice and interesting. And actually, Fridays I get into this Nook book reading, and the chapter 2 is what we will read on next Friday, upcoming Friday. And it talks about knowing and seeing. And again, I will read from for the first, just the first quote what they have mentioned from the Upanishads. From the unreal, lead me to the real. From darkness, lead me to light. From death, lead me to immortality. It's from the Briha. I'm so bad with this. Brihad Arayanakaya
Asato
Upanishad.
Ma Sadgamaya, Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya. That's the one.
Okay. Okay.
Amritamaya.
Sticking too much to Taoism. That is and not as a Buddhist also. I am trying to read that and with my teacher, but um, it just I'm not the rational one at all. I don't work with the mind, which is very crazy. It's completely the feel, the heart space for me, which is very, very active. So, okay. I'm
Thank
happy
you.
with that.
Thank you. That's in sign language.
Oh,
Thank you.
this one? Okay.
No, yeah, from the chin, not from the mouth. It will become a flying kiss.
Okay, there you go.
You can do both.
Yes.
Both are welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and
Thank
you
you for
all
the
have
lovely.
a nice
Thank you,
weekend.
Neeta.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Take
much.
care.
It
Bye
It
was
was
bye.
lovely.
Bye.
very
Nice
nice.
day.
Bye.
Thank you.